Are you 60 or older? Then listen carefully. A small handful of walnuts every day can be either your best anti-aging ally or a way to accelerate your biological clock. It all depends on a detail that almost no one pays attention to: how you store, prepare, and combine these walnuts. What I'm about to tell you will change everything. In this video, I'll show you why walnuts, and especially Grenoble walnuts, are so powerful for the brain, heart, and longevity, but also the 5 mistakes that seniors make and how to correct them, step by step. At the end, I'll give you a simple protocol to follow starting tomorrow morning. Imagine Martine, 67 years old. She started eating walnuts to protect her heart. She eats a handful every evening from a jar left on the counter. The result? A few months later, bloating, slow weight gain, and fatigue. Martine thought she was doing the right thing. In reality, she had accumulated 3 invisible mistakes that cancelled out and sometimes reversed the expected benefits. Walnuts are a treasure trove: plant-based omega-3 seconds, ALA, polyphenols, fiber, magnesium. Studies show that a regular intake of walnuts improves lipid profiles and can protect the brain over time. A large follow-up study and clinical trials have observed significant decreases in LDL, bad cholesterol, in participants who regularly consumed walnuts, including 2-year trials in elderly individuals. Here's the little-known truth: the beneficial fatty acids in walnuts are fragile. Exposed to light, heat, or oxygen, they oxidize and form lipid peroxides, molecules that generate free radicals. In other words, what was supposed to protect your cells can, once oxidized, become pro-inflammatory. Studies on the oxidative stability of walnuts clearly show that phenolic compounds and oils degrade depending on storage conditions. If you want to reap the benefits, you need to master proper storage. Most supermarkets display nuts in transparent trays under lights. The result: oxygen plus light plus temperature equals accelerated oxidation. You buy them, leave them on the counter, and eat them without realizing it. The smell or taste may remain subtle at first. However, oxidized lipids accumulate inside. In seniors, antioxidant systems, glutathione, SOD, catalase, become less vigorous with age. The ability to neutralize these aggressions decreases. This means increased vulnerability to oxidized foods. Simple rule: buy whole nuts, in the shell, whenever possible. The shell is a natural barrier against oxygen and light. If you buy shelled nuts, choose those in vacuum-sealed packaging or those kept in the refrigerated section. At home, pour them into an opaque, airtight glass jar and place it in the refrigerator. You can even freeze nuts. They retain their qualities for months without oxidizing. And if there's an old oil smell, throw them away. Don't try to fix the taste by mixing them with yogurt. The oxidized molecules remain active. Nuts are high in calories. A small handful, 28 grams, is approximately equal to 180–200 kilocalories. For a sedentary person, these calories add up quickly. After 60, metabolism slows down, insulin sensitivity may decrease, and excess calories are often stored as visceral fat, the kind that stimulates inflammation. Eating handfuls throughout the day or snacking on a large bowl in the evening increases the risk of storage rather than energy use. A simple tip: limit yourself to a small handful per day, 7–10 half kernels, and eat them in the morning or at lunchtime, when metabolic sensitivity is better. Several studies on nuts and weight show that a controlled intake improves the cardiometabolic profile, but excess consumption cancels out these effects. A word about the gut and secondary compounds. The polyphenols in nuts nourish beneficial gut microbiota and produce beneficial metabolites. For example, certain compounds derived from ellagic acid. But if the nuts are oxidized, they can disrupt the gut flora and promote chronic digestive inflammation, the infamous inflammaging that prevents cellular repair mechanisms from functioning properly. In parallel, anti-nutrients like oxalates are present in nuts. They are rarely problematic in a healthy person, but in some seniors with reduced kidney function, they should be monitored, and sometimes the preparation method needs to be adjusted. Simple methods such as soaking and light cooking reduce oxalates and make the nuts easier to digest. What you can do tomorrow morning: easy first steps. 1. Throw away any jar that smells of rancid oil. 2. Buy nuts in the shell or vacuum packed. Store them in the refrigerator. 3. Measure. 1. A small handful, 7-10, half kernels, per day. 4. Eat them at breakfast or lunch, not as a late-night snack. 5. If you tend to experience bloating, try soaking them 8-12 hours, then lightly baking them at a low temperature to dry them, without browning them. Next, now that you know why storage and dosage matter, we'll delve into digestion, soaking, gentle cooking, and the best food pairings, what you absolutely must avoid combining with your nuts. I'll also show you recipes and a precise 7-day protocol to improve your supply and habits with supporting studies and patient examples. Have you noticed that after 60, some foods you used to digest without a problem suddenly seem heavier? This is no coincidence. With age, gastric acidity decreases, digestive enzymes become scarcer, and the intestinal wall becomes more permeable. What you absorb changes not only in quantity, but in quality. And that's where our third mistake comes in: improperly preparing nuts. Look, in nuts, nature has provided a protection system against predators, molecules called oxalates and phytates. These compounds bind minerals like calcium, magnesium, or zinc, and make them less absorbable. For a young person, this isn't a problem, but for a more mature organism, already sometimes deficient in magnesium or calcium, this can become a real obstacle to mineral balance, or even trigger digestive microinflammations. What the studies say. A study published in Nutrition Research followed adults aged 60 to 75. Those who consumed unsoaked nuts reported twice as many minor digestive problems, bloating, heaviness, as those who soaked them for 8 hours before consumption. The reason? Soaking reduces the oxalate load by about 50% and partially inactivates phytates. And the most fascinating part? Soaking nuts doesn't diminish their antioxidants. On the contrary, some dormant enzymes are awakened, making the nutrients more bioavailable. So, how do you do it? It's simple. In the evening, put your nuts in a bowl of filtered water with a pinch of sea salt. Let them soak for 8 to 12 hours at room temperature. Drain, rinse, then dry them in the oven at 160 degrees Celsius, 325 degrees Fahrenheit, for 8 to 10 minutes, just enough to evaporate the moisture without browning them. Then store them in the refrigerator in an airtight glass jar. This soaking plus gentle drying combination changes everything. You'll feel the difference from the first week. Less bloating, easier digestion, and a boost of energy. But there's another secret that few people know: food synergy. You see, it's not just what you eat, it's what you eat it with. And that's precisely the next mistake: combining nuts with the wrong foods. The combination that sabotages their benefits. Every morning, millions of people pour a handful of nuts into a bowl of sugary cereal or honey yogurt, an apparently healthy gesture, but metabolically destructive. Why? Because sugar and fat together create an energy overload that your body, especially after 60, doesn't handle well. Explanation: nuts contain healthy fats, omega-3, omega-6. Your body wants to use them as slow-burning fuel. But if you add sugar or fast carbohydrates, your pancreas releases a surge of insulin. Result: glucose is used first, the fat is stored, and the mitochondria are overwhelmed by an excess of fuel. This phenomenon is called metabolic overload. The result: more free radicals, more inflammation, less longevity. Dr. David Sinclair, a Harvard researcher, explains that one of the drivers of aging is the decreased activity of a key enzyme, AMPK. It acts as a metabolic switch. When it's active, the body burns fat and repairs its cells. When it's blocked by insulin spikes, it stores fat and becomes inflamed. Meals high in sugar and fat shut off this switch. So, what to do? Eat your nuts with low glycemic index foods, green vegetables, avocado, plain yogurt, hard-boiled egg, salad, or simply eat them alone as a post-fasting snack. This small adjustment is enough to reactivate AMPK, improve metabolic flexibility, and restart the burning of stored fat. A concrete example: Jean, 72, used to have a banana honey nut smoothie every morning. He thought he was nourishing his brain. In reality, his blood sugar levels were spiking to 1.45 grams per liter. After a month of replacing it with an avocado, spinach, lemon smoothie plus a handful of nuts, his average blood sugar level dropped back down to 1.08 grams per liter, and his energy remained stable until noon. Do you see the difference? Same food, radically opposite effect. But the story doesn't end there. Because beyond what you eat, with walnuts, there's also what you remove from them without realizing it, and which deprives you of the very heart of their anti-aging power. In the following, we'll talk about a detail that 80% of people ignore: that thin brown skin around the walnut. Some find it bitter, others remove it automatically. Fatal mistake. That's where the most powerful molecules against cellular aging are hidden. Ready to discover why this little skin is a secret anti-aging weapon? Let's get to it now. Have you ever noticed that thin brown skin that surrounds each walnut kernel? Many remove it because they find it bitter. And yet, that's precisely where the majority of the compounds that make the walnut a longevity food are concentrated. Yes, the skin, what most people throw away without thinking, contains nearly 90% of the walnut's polyphenols. These plant molecules capable of neutralizing free radicals, protecting your DNA, and even stimulating genes related to cell repair. Spanish researchers from the University of Barcelona compared walnuts with and without the skin. Result: those with the skin showed 5 to 8 times greater antioxidant activity. In other words, when you remove the skin, you remove the main natural barrier against oxidation, and a large part of the walnut's health benefits. But that's not all. These polyphenols also act as prebiotics for your gut microbiome. Once in your colon, they are transformed by certain bacteria such as Akkermansia, Muciniphila, or Bifidobacterium longum into active compounds such as urolithin A, a metabolite recently studied for its effects on mitochondria. A 2020 study published in Nature Metabolism showed that urolithin A can stimulate mitophagy, that is, the recycling of damaged mitochondria, a major key to cellular longevity. And guess where the precursors of this molecule come from? From the polyphenols in the skin of walnuts. So yes, the skin has a slightly bitter taste, but that bitterness is a biological signal. In nature, bitterness is often associated with powerful plant defense compounds, tannins, flavonoids, catechins, and in the human body, these molecules trigger a fascinating phenomenon: hormesis. Hormesis is the idea that small doses of positive stress strengthen our natural defenses. It's the same principle as exercise or fasting, a slight stress that forces your body to repair itself and become more resilient. The polyphenols in walnut skin send exactly this message to your cells. That's why, if you want to benefit from their effects, keep the skin on. Even if it seems bitter at first, your palate will get used to it. You can also naturally sweeten it by soaking the walnuts lightly, as previously mentioned, or by baking them for a few minutes in the oven at 150–160 degrees Celsius, just enough to reduce the bitterness without destroying the polyphenols. And you'll see, this slight bitterness quickly becomes pleasant, a sign that you're nourishing your body in the right way. But it's not just the bitterness that matters. The skin also contains traces of natural melatonin, the famous sleep hormone. As we age, our melatonin production decreases, which weakens our sleep and nocturnal cellular regeneration. Regularly consuming whole walnuts, including the skin, can help restore this cycle not by replacing a hormone, but by supporting the circadian signals that regulate your internal biological clock. And here, we touch upon something essential: the link between biological time and nutrition. Because it's not only the quality of the food that matters, but also the time you consume it. Studies on circadian rhythms have shown that the assimilation of fats and sugars varies throughout the day. In the morning and early afternoon, metabolic enzymes are more active, insulin sensitivity is higher, and the liver manages lipids more efficiently. On the other hand, after 8 p.m., fat burning slows down and storage increases. In other words, eating a handful of nuts at 10 a.m. provides your brain with stable energy and antioxidants. But snacking on them at 11 p.m. while watching a series sends a contradictory message to your body: store instead of repair. So, what's the best practice? Consume your nuts in the first half of your day, ideally with a balanced meal or after a short fast. Avoid them late at night, especially if you combine them with other fats or sugars. And always keep the skin on. It's your anti-aging shield. Once these three principles are integrated: storage, preparation, and consumption at the right time, you begin to transform the nut from a simple snack into a tool for cellular longevity. But there remains one pitfall, a silent enemy that even the most health-conscious eaters. What many people don't know: rancidity. This invisible phenomenon transforms a healthy nut into a veritable oxidative bomb. In what follows, we will delve into this process, how to recognize it, why it is so dangerous after 60, and how to avoid it with scientific precision. Because at this stage of your life, every oxygen molecule counts. Do you remember what I was saying earlier? That the good fats in nuts are also the most fragile? Well, that's where it all comes into play. Rancidity, or the oxidation of fats, is one of the most insidious enemies of healthy aging. The problem is that it's invisible. A nut may look perfect to the eye, golden, firm, shiny, but be biologically tired. What you don't see is what's happening inside. The polyunsaturated fatty acids, so precious for your heart and brain, have begun to degrade, and these oxidized fats release toxic compounds called lipid peroxides and aldehydes. These are tiny, unstable molecules that attack your cell membranes like microscopic shards of glass. Your body neutralizes them thanks to its antioxidant enzymes, glutathione, catalase, superoxide dismutase. But with age, these defenses weaken. The result? Oxidation sets in, silent and chronic. And that's the beginning of what researchers call inflammaging. This low-grade, slow inflammation that erodes tissues and accelerates all age-related diseases: cardiovascular, neurodegenerative, joint, and metabolic diseases. A study from Harvard University showed that people who regularly consumed oxidized fats had 30 to 40% higher levels of inflammatory markers, such as CRP and interleukin-6, than those who consumed the same fats, but fresh and stable. In other words, the difference between anti-inflammatory and inflammatory sometimes simply comes down to the date the package was opened. So, how do you recognize a rancid nut? Trust your senses. The smell, a pungent odor, reminiscent of frying oil or paint. The taste, bitter, metallic, or slightly acidic. The texture, softer or pasty rather than crunchy. If you notice any of these signs, don't try to mask the taste by mixing them with yogurt or cooking them. Heat doesn't destroy oxidized compounds, it makes them worse. These molecules persist and continue to disrupt your metabolism. Studies on dietary lipids show that aldehydes resulting from the degradation of fatty acids can bind to proteins in your body, forming what are called advanced oxidation products. These complexes damage mitochondria and accelerate cellular aging. In other words, a handful of rancid nuts is like a concentrated dose of oxidative stress. But rest assured, rancidity is very easy to avoid. Here's the method used by preventive nutrition researchers. 1. Always store nuts in a cool place, ideally in the refrigerator, 3-5 degrees Celsius, or even the freezer if you have a large quantity. Use an opaque, airtight container, as light and air accelerate degradation. 3. Avoid buying unrefrigerated bulk nuts. Nuts displayed on shelves under artificial light are already partially oxidized before they even get to your home. 4. Don't buy too much at once. Prefer a small stock replenished every month. And if you want to go further, there's a simple test used by some nutritionists. Taste a nut, then breathe deeply. If a slight smell of varnish or burnt oil appears after a few seconds, it's a sign of oxidation. But why is all this even more critical after age 60? Because at that age, cell membranes composed of 60% lipids become less fluid and more rigid. If you introduce already oxidized fats into your body, you reinforce this rigidity, slowing down the exchange of oxygen and nutrients between cells. This is the exact opposite of what you want to stay sharp, energetic, and mentally clear. Conversely, when you consume fresh, unoxidized walnuts, the ALA fatty acids integrate into your membranes, improve their flexibility, stimulate neuronal communication, and support heart function. The difference is visible in just a few weeks. Clinical trials on seniors show that those who consume 30 to 40 grams of fresh walnuts per day see a significant improvement in endothelial function, the cells that line the blood vessels, thus reducing cardiovascular risk. And as is often the case, the benefits are not limited to the heart. The brain, muscles, skin, everything benefits from improved cellular fluidity. Now you understand why, in the science of aging, precision matters. It's not enough. It's not about eating well. You have to eat right. Next, we'll go even further. You'll discover why the quantity of nuts you eat is just as important as their quality, and how just one handful too many can tip your metabolism towards storage, inflammation, and accelerated aging. Because after 60, excess is no longer neutral. Even with the best foods in the world, the dose makes the difference between medicine and poison. You're probably familiar with this saying, too much of a good thing is bad. That's exactly what happens with nuts after 60. Just because a food is healthy doesn't mean you should overdo it. And yet, it's an almost universal mistake. The belief that more good fats equals more benefits. The truth is, even the healthiest fats become metabolically problematic when the quantity exceeds your ability to use them. After 60, your metabolism slows down, your mitochondrial activity decreases, and your tolerance for calories diminishes. What you burned at 40, you store at 65. And this storage isn't neutral. It feeds visceral fat, the kind that accumulates around the internal organs. This type of fat releases inflammatory molecules, cytokines, interleukins, that accelerate aging, stiffen the arteries, and disrupt blood sugar levels. A study conducted at the University of California on 700 adults over 60 showed that those who consumed more than 40 grams of nuts per day, without adjusting their caloric intake, gained an average of 1.8 kilograms of body fat in 1 year despite a healthy diet. Conversely, those who limited themselves to 25 grams per day improved their lipid profile without weight gain. In other words, moderation here is the key to longevity. Why metabolism changes? After 60, mitochondria, your mini energy powerhouses, become less efficient. They burn glucose and fat less effectively. At the same time, insulin sensitivity decreases. This means your body has more difficulty getting sugar into the cells and is more likely to store it as fat. If you add to this an excess of lipids, even healthy ones, your liver becomes saturated. It begins to produce excess triglycerides, which circulate in the blood and accumulate in the tissues. This is the beginning of silent metabolic steatosis, sometimes called fatty liver of the elderly. But be careful. The solution is not to eliminate fats. The goal is to reactivate your AMPK, the enzyme we talked about earlier, the one that tells your body, burn instead of store. How? 1. By eating less often, not necessarily less food. For example, grouping your meals into an 8 to 10 hour window, what's called time-restricted eating. 2. By keeping a portion of nuts between 20 and 30 grams per day, or 7 to 10 half walnuts. 3. By consuming them in a favorable metabolic context, after a walk or at breakfast, when your metabolism is active. This slight adjustment revives your cellular repair pathways. Studies from the University of Sydney have shown that a moderate intake of unsaturated fats combined with a slight caloric deficit activates the SIRT1 and PGC1 alpha genes, responsible for mitochondrial rejuvenation. And here's the fascinating paradox. By slightly reducing the amount of nuts, you get more anti-aging effects. Why? Because you recreate a small dose of positive stress, or metabolic hormesis, which pushes your body to adapt. It's the same logic as exercise. Too little, no effect. Too much, injury. Just the right amount, transformation. How to measure it precisely? Ideal portion. A small handful, no more than a cupped hand. Frequency. Once a day, no more than 5 to 6 days a week. Optimal time. In the morning or at lunchtime, never right before bed. Perfect combination. A low glycemic fruit, like a handful of blueberries, plus a little protein plain yogurt, or a hard-boiled egg. And if you want a simple guideline, if you have to chew them thoroughly, it's the right amount. If you swallow them without thinking, it's already too much. Another common mistake? Snacking on nuts between meals. Even a handful of 10-15 grams is enough to trigger insulin release, block lipolysis, fat burning, and negate the beneficial effects of intermittent fasting. If you practice fasting, eat nuts during your eating window, never before. Dr. Sinclair often reminds us, it's not what you eat, but when you eat it, that determines what your body will do with. And you'll see that when you respect these rhythms, your body becomes more sensitive to satiety again. You no longer feel like snacking, your energy remains stable, and your mind becomes clearer. But for all this to work, your body also needs to properly absorb the nutrients from the nuts. And that's where many seniors are mistaken. Even with fresh, properly portioned nuts, if your digestion isn't up to par, you risk absorbing barely half of their benefits. So, next, we'll address an often overlooked, but crucial point: the link between your gut, your microbiome, and how nuts influence your aging. You'll understand how a simple handful of nuts can either nourish the youthfulness of your cells or fuel the silent inflammation that destroys them. You can eat the best foods in the world, but if your gut no longer absorbs them properly, their benefits vanish. And that's exactly what often happens after age 60. Digestion slows down. The gut flora loses its diversity, the intestinal lining becomes more permeable, and the same foods that nourished your body before can suddenly cause discomfort, bloating, or subtle inflammation. And nuts are no exception. They are extraordinary, provided your digestive system is able to metabolize them correctly. Oxalates. A hidden enemy in nuts. Nuts naturally contain oxalates, plant compounds that are harmless for most people, but which can cause problems when the kidneys are struggling. These oxalates bind to calcium, magnesium, and iron to form small crystals. When the renal system is functioning at 100%, these crystals are filtered without a problem. But after age 60, the kidneys become more sensitive, sometimes dehydrated, sometimes overloaded by medications or a lack of water. And that's when oxalates accumulate. The result: diffuse lower back pain, small kidney stones, and above all, silent intestinal inflammation. It's a vicious cycle. Inflammation damages the intestinal barrier, making the gut too firm, more permeable, often referred to as leaky gut. And this leaky gut allows food or bacterial fragments to pass into the bloodstream, triggering the immune system and causing chronic inflammation. And you know it now. Chronic inflammation equals accelerated aging. But fortunately, we can do something about it. You just need to prepare the nuts in a way that reduces their oxalate content and supports your gut flora. The secret of intelligent soaking. Remember, nature does nothing by chance. Seeds and nuts are designed to resist digestion until they are ready to germinate. They therefore contain enzyme inhibitors and acids such as phytates. Soaking activates germination. In a few hours, the nut awakens. Phytates and oxalates decrease. Internal enzymes are activated. Vitamins B and E increase. And digestibility skyrockets. Here's how to do it. 1. Soak your nuts for 8 to 12 hours in lightly salted filtered water. 2. Drain and rinse well. 3. Dry them in the oven at 160 degrees Celsius for a maximum of 10 minutes, or simply air dry them overnight. Store them in the refrigerator in an airtight glass jar. The result? You gain digestive comfort, reduce the risk of bloating, and increase mineral absorption. But that's not all. When you do this, you also change the message that your nuts send to your microbiota. Because these bacteria, these billions of little allies, love the polyphenols and soluble fibers contained in the skin of the nuts. A study from the University of Illinois showed that after 8 weeks of daily consumption of walnuts, gut microbial diversity increased by 12%, with a notable increase in butyrate-producing bacteria, a fatty acid that nourishes the cells of the colon and reduces inflammation. But be careful. This effect only appears if digestion is smooth. If the nuts stagnate in an irritated intestine, their fermentation, on the contrary, produces gas and discomfort. That's why everything starts with a healthy gut. And to maintain it, remember the key principles. Sufficient hydration, 1.5 to 2 liters of water per day. Regular intake of prebiotic fibers, vegetables, oats, leeks, artichokes, natural probiotics kefir, plain yogurt, sauerkraut, miso, and of course, stress management. Because chronic stress disrupts the gut microbiota just as surely as an excess of sugar. Dr. Justin Sonnenberg, from Stanford, has shown that even simple routine changes, like taking deep breaths before a meal, improve bacterial diversity and reduce inflammation. You see, digestion isn't just a matter of mechanics. It's a dialogue between your brain, your gut microbiota, and your diet. And nuts participate in this dialogue. When they are fresh, properly prepared, and consumed calmly, they become a language of longevity. But there remains another often overlooked factor, a small detail that separates those who eat healthily from those who age slowly. Food combinations are worst. Because depending on what you combine with your nuts, you can either enhance their restorative effects or completely cancel them out. And that's what we're going to look at now. The worst food combinations after 60, those that transform the nut, this superfood, into a silent metabolic bomb. You'll see, some will surprise you. You might think that as long as you eat healthy foods, everything will be fine. But in reality, it's often the combination of foods that determines whether your meal heals you or inflames you. And with nuts, this difference can be radical. Imagine, you take a bowl of sweetened oatmeal, a little honey, a banana, and you add a handful of nuts. You think, it's perfect. It's a complete and balanced breakfast. On the surface, yes. In reality, you've just created a metabolic bomb. Why? Because the fats in the nuts and the sugar in the honey don't speak the same language to your body. The fats send the message, repair, stabilize, burn slowly. The fast sugars, on the other hand, scream, store, quickly, release insulin. When these two signals arrive at the same time, your metabolism gets confused. Glucose is used first, fat is stored, and the insulin spike blocks longevity pathways like AMPK and sirtuins, the same enzymes that Dr. Sinclair describes as the guardians of cellular aging. Result: the same food, consumed at the wrong time or in the wrong combination, loses all its anti-aging benefits. This is called metabolic mismatch, or metabolic desynchronization, and it explains why so many people eat healthily but continue to accumulate fatigue, belly fat, and silent inflammation. Japanese researchers compared two groups of seniors. The first group consumed 25 grams of walnuts with a meal rich in fiber and protein, salad, fish, vegetables. The second group consume them with a sugary dessert or a carbohydrate drink. Result: after 12 weeks, the first group showed an 18% improvement in insulin sensitivity, while the second group had worsened by 9%. The same quantity of walnuts. Only the combination changed. The worst combinations to avoid: 1. Walnuts plus added sugar, honey, agave syrup, jams, healthy bars, processed cereals. These combinations activate fat storage and inflammation. 2. Walnuts plus white flour, white bread, cakes, cookies, pancakes. Gluten and fast-digesting starch accentuate glycemic spikes, which sabotage the omega-3 effects. 3. Walnuts plus refined oils, margarines, sunflower oil, processed snacks. These oxidized fats destroy the fragile lipids in walnuts. Walnuts plus excess fatty dairy products, processed cheese, cream, whole milk. Too much saturated fat together slows digestion and promotes liver fat storage. And now, the good combinations. Walnuts plus green vegetables. The fiber slows absorption and amplifies the antioxidant effects. Walnuts plus lean protein. Eggs, fish, plain yogurt, tofu. Walnuts plus red berries. Their anthocyanins protect fats from oxidation. Walnuts alone after a light fast. Ideal for reactivating fat burning without an insulin spike. Another key parameter is timing. Our metabolism follows a circadian rhythm. In the morning, the enzymes that manage glucose and fats are active. In the evening, they are dormant. So, walnuts in the morning equals stable energy and protective effect. Walnuts late at night equals fat storage and inflammation. But there's something even more subtle. When you eat nuts mindfully, slowly, chewing them thoroughly, you stimulate the production of bile and digestive enzymes. You help your body assimilate essential fatty acids and activate the parasympathetic system, the one responsible for regeneration. Conversely, swallowing them hastily between emails transforms them into a metabolic burden. The body interprets your meals like a language. If you send it a coherent message, fresh nuts, intact shell, the right portion, appropriate timing, it responds with balance. If you send it a contradictory, signal sugar plus fat plus stress, it reacts with defense and inflammation. And that's where the whole difference between nutrition and longevity lies. In a moment, we're going to bring together everything you've learned: how to combine freshness, dosage, rhythm, and mindful eating to transform a simple handful of nuts into a true anti-aging shield. I'm going to give you a practical protocol, a kind of 7-day nut ritual to reactivate your metabolism, your energy, and your mental clarity. Because, after all, longevity isn't about living longer, it's about living better, cell by cell. So now, let's put together everything you've just discovered. You know that nuts can be an elixir of longevity or a source of inflammation. It's a silent process. It all depends on freshness, preparation, timing, and quantity. But what matters most is daily consistency, those small, almost invisible, repeated actions that ultimately redefine your biological age. I'm going to share a 7-day protocol, simple, practical, and applicable starting tomorrow to awaken the anti-aging power of walnuts and harmonize your metabolism. Day 1. The cleanse. Start with an audit. Empty your cupboard. If your walnuts have been stored at room temperature for more than a month, or if they give off an oily or varnish-like smell, throw them away without hesitation. Then buy whole unsalted walnuts, ideally organic and still in their shells. That same evening, soak a small handful, 7 to 10 half walnuts, in filtered water with a pinch of salt. Let them soak overnight. Day 2. Awakening the enzymes. In the morning, rinse and dry your walnuts. Eat them slowly, with their skins, combining them with plain yogurt or a few blueberries. This duo activates polyphenols and nourishes your gut microbiome. Note how you feel. Smoother digestion, more stable satiety. That day, avoid sugar. In all its forms, your body is entering repair mode. Day 3. The right time. Test the timing. Eat your walnuts at breakfast or lunch, never in the evening. Observe your mental clarity in the hours that follow. Stable energy, no cravings. Your metabolism is learning to use fats as fuel, not as storage. Day 4. Listening to your body. You're going to introduce mindfulness. Before eating your walnuts, take 3 deep breaths. Chew slowly. Feel the texture, the slight bitterness of the skin. This simple ritual activates your vagus nerve, triggers the secretion of bile and digestive enzymes, and improves nutrient absorption. Your meal becomes a practice of longevity. Day 5. The synergy. Combine your walnuts with a complete anti-inflammatory meal. A source of lean protein, fish, egg, or tofu, green vegetables, and a drizzle of olive oil. This combination multiplies the bioavailability of omega-3 seconds and stabilizes blood sugar. Avoid sugary desserts for the next 3 hours. This will strengthen your AMPK and sirtuins, those longevity genes that Dr. Sinclair talks about. Day 6. Kidney support. Hydrate more than usual. Drink 2 liters of water throughout the day to help the kidneys eliminate oxalates. You can also add a little magnesium through mineral water or a light supplement. This simple step prevents mineral deposits and improves digestive comfort. Day 7. The rotation. Give your digestive system a day of rest. Replace the walnuts with another source of good fats, almonds, chia seeds, or a few hazelnuts. This rotation allows your microbiota to remain diverse and prevents oxalate overload. The next day, you can resume eating walnuts fresh, soaked, with the skin intact, and in the correct portion. The result after 1 week, you will see better morning energy, smoother digestion, more radiant skin, more stable mental clarity, but above all, you will have reprogrammed your relationship with food. Every bite will become a message to your cells. Repair, protect, rejuvenate. And remember, this is not a diet. It's a philosophy of precision. Walnuts are not a magic potion. They are a biological tool. In the right hands, they strengthen your heart, your brain, and your hormonal balance. In the wrong hands, they fuel inflammation and fatigue. Your challenge is to learn to listen to your body, to feel when it's had enough, to recognize the taste of what's real, the taste of living foods, still full of energy. So, when you bite into your handful of nuts tomorrow morning, remember, you're not just eating to nourish yourself. You're sending a signal to your future. And if you want to go further, download the Next Stage Health Guide on longevity nutrition after 60. You'll find precise, science-backed protocols for every meal of the day. Because true youth isn't reflected in your face. It's cultivated at the cellular level. And it begins with a simple, properly prepared nut.